Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage. We're back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday. And today we're talking about whether you are stuck in what I call thyroid purgatory. So what does that mean? If you're the person who's on thyroid medication, T4, T3, T3, and somebody has said, hey, we've optimized or normalized your TSH or your T4 or your T3. In medicine, your medical doctor is probably concerned about your TSH. Hey, your TSH is now in normal range with your T4 medication, so we've now fixed your thyroid physiology. Or if you're seeing a functional or integrated practitioner who uses T4 and T3, and they're providing both T4 and T3, but more T3 because they're trying to optimize your T3. You'll hear this term a lot. Hey, we're going to optimize your thyroid blood levels. And they're telling you with the dose that you're on, you're now either normal or optimal, have normal thyroid physiology or optimal physiology, but your body's telling you a different story and you're still symptomatic. Maybe you feel a little bit better, but you don't feel well. Maybe your symptoms are a little bit better, but they're still present. And you just generally don't feel good, then you're in thyroid purgatory. As you try and increase the dose, you don't feel better, but if you reduce the dose, you don't feel better, and somebody's telling you're optimal. This is thyroid purgatory. You're almost being gaslit, I guess is the new term today. So what do you do, and why does this typically happen? The biggest reason this happens is that we don't take into consideration the state you're in. I talk about this in the book, The Thyroid Debacle. I talk about this on the podcast and other people's podcasts and when I teach. We typically operate in one of two states. We're either in a low stress, homeostatic, regulatory state where we make enough energy to run all the systems of the body appropriately. The other state is what we call an excessive stress state or allostatic regulation. And this is when there's a threat, when there's danger, when we're making less energy than we need to run all the systems of the body. Then we need to downregulate the less important systems in the moment and upregulate the more important systems in the moment. And thyroid hormone is critical to this shift from homeostatic to allostatic regulation. Under allostatic regulation, we need to ramp up the inflammatory process to defend ourselves against the threat. Now, what's the threat? Physical stress, chemical stress, emotional stress, disrupted sleep patterns, disrupted breathing patterns. These are the things that Dr. Kelly and I talk about, the fitness factors in the book. Originally, we had 10 fitness factors. Now we're up to about 17 fitness factors. Things that influence your physiology and create an excessive stress response on your physiology. And when we have this danger, excessive stress physiology, the body shifts its regulatory mode to downregulate the less important stuff, upregulate the cell defense and inflammatory and immune systems to find the thing and kill it. In thyroid hormone, the change in thyroid regulation, the reduced production of thyroid hormone by the gland, the reduced conversion of T4 to T3 peripherally, the upregulation of reverse T3, the rise in potential antibodies. We look at those things as if the body's broken, but these are part of the adaptive response to this cell stress or cell threat response. So your body isn't broken, it's adapting to whatever creating the excessive stress on your physiology. So why is this important? Because what happens to most people is that they go to see their medical physician, the medical physician or their integrative practitioner or their functional medicine practitioner doesn't take into consideration the state you're in. They just see low T4 or low T3 or elevated reverse T3 or thyroid antibodies and make the assumption that you're broken and your thyroid gland can't make thyroid hormone, or you're broken and you can't convert T4 to T3, or your body is broken and now it's only converting T4 to reverse T3 and that's preventing you from feeling well. When in reality, that's not true. They're not aware that you're not in homeostasis, and what they see on the thyroid panel is the adaptive response to the excessive stress. So because they're not asking you about what state you're in, because they're not aware that thyroid physiology works differently in homeostasis than it does in this allostatic excessive stress state. They just think that the thyroid labs are the problem, and the amount of thyroid hormone in the blood is the problem. And so the assumption in medicine is, hey, there's not enough T4, the thyroid gland can't make it, so I'll just give you T4. The assumption in integrative and functional medicine models is often, well, you got T4, but you're not converting that T4 to T3. For some reason, your body is not able to do it anymore, and therefore we need to give you T3 to optimize your thyroid physiology. But the reality is, it doesn't work that way. You're trying to provide more thyroid hormone to a system that doesn't want it or didn't need it because it's not part of the protective response. So you get some medication, it makes you maybe feel a little bit better temporarily, but it doesn't last. Why? Because the body then has to deal with this extra thyroid hormone that it didn't want. And so, yep, you get your hit, but it doesn't last. So then what happens is you try and get a stronger dose and a stronger dose. And then you get to a dose of, let's say, T4, where not only does it helps, but it's also creating some hyperthyroid symptoms, or your hypothyroid symptoms are getting worse. So then you have to back down again. So you can't go down, you can't go up. That's when you typically shift to a different practitioner who provides T4 and T3, and they'll give you some T4, and then they start ratcheting up T3 based on symptoms and where they want to drive T3 with medication into their, concocted optimal range, and assume that if they can get the T3 into this optimal range that they've decided is appropriate for you, that means they've improved your thyroid physiology or optimized it. I disagree. Your thyroid physiology is already optimized for your state, okay, at least initially. And so adding more thyroid hormone to a system that doesn't want it doesn't make you feel better. It just traps you in this state of, I'm fine, I'm okay. You can get by, but you're stuck somewhere between illness and wellness, but you're not well. You're stuck somewhere between where you were and really where you want to be. And you feel like you're stuck. You can't get out of it. You're frustrated. You feel like you're being gaslit by your physicians who are telling you, hey, everything's normal, everything's fine. It's not normal. It's not fine. You haven't been optimized. And this is why you feel stuck and frustrated. So what do we do? How do we fix this process? I talk about this in my Thyroid Shorts episode this week. You can go watch that one. It's episode 4. And I talk about this more in depth. But the reality is we need to ID whether you're in homeostasis or allostasis. If you're in allostasis, then we need to support you with medication to support an allostatic state, not assuming that we just maximize the blood levels to what a person in homeostasis would need. You're not in homeostasis. If you're in allostasis, we need to support an allostatic state. And there are times that the longer you're in this hypothyroid state that you really don't have enough T4 in the system, and maybe a little bit of T3 does help with some of the symptoms, but we don't want to provide so much medication to optimize the blood and suppress TSH really low, because that prevents thyroid recovery, the ability to properly regulate thyroid physiology and allow the gland to recover. So you will never optimize somebody. I will never optimize somebody. Your physician will never optimize you if you're in allostasis. And what we have to do to help you get well is we have to recognize you're in allostasis and support appropriately. And then 2, we need to identify the stressors that are creating the excessive cell stress state that's driving the shift to allostatic regulation. And then we need to reduce and eliminate those things so that the body can start to shift back into a more homeostatic state. Then the medication you get, T4, T3, will work better, and you'll feel and function better. And what many of you will find, and many of my patients find, is as we help them identify the stress load, reduce or eliminate those, and support the shift back to homeostatic regulation, the thyroid medication they're on works better, and they need less and sometimes none over time. Hope this helps. Check out the new episode of Thyroid Shorts on my podcast, episode 4.